Good morning. There we go. Let's get Facebook in here. Get the pipes warmed up a little bit. Coming in not warmed up. Typically, I've been doing the Falcons show before that, but not today. So, excuse me as I clear my throat. Couldn't find my coffee thermos this morning, so we're drinking out of a mug as well. Good morning. Happy Thursday, Eric. Happy May. How you doing?
Terribly. Tired, sick, toothache, everything that can go wrong's gone wrong pretty much, but I'm here. And it's going to be a fun topic today. I see we're talking about the rookie expectations and roles this year. It's going to be a fun one. It's going to be an interesting one because I'm really curious to see where you stand on some of this with, some of the conversations we've had privately since the draft and what we've had publicly as well. Curious to see where we differ in this.
Yeah. So Thursday morning, an extra show since yesterday I was single dad life. As you can see, the mustache is gone. So that means the Natalie, my wife, landed and is back. So I like to live in a house of peace. And next time you can expect it is next time she's gone or I'm gone. I like to rock the mountain mustache when I'm be backpacking for a few days. So can't keep it clean, right? By day like 5, it's just kind of scruff everywhere with longer lip sweater going on. But we're here, we're hanging out, and let's say hello to the chat on this special episode. I did put it out on Twitter Tuesday night that we'd be going live today. So hopefully some people got the smoke signal out there. We got Jeremy says, morning fellas. I expect 3 to 4 day one starters and 6 out of 7 will make the 53. I'm optimistic. That is optimistic just because of the talent of the Broncos roster as it stands right now. Now, I do think 6 of 7 making the roster is not crazy. That Utah tight end is definitely the long shot out of them, especially in one of your latest picks. You have so few day 3 picks, and your second latest day 3 pick is a punter. Like, that's a formula for a majority of the guys making the roster. But we'll see. Good to see you, Jeremy. Am I off my rocker there? The Utah tight end, who I still can't get his name right, Lawfer, what the last name from the basketball player, but he's the one who probably is the odd man out right now from the 53-man perspective. But we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought his last name was Loner.
Loner, there it is. Yep, I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, but I mean, I've heard it. I saw somebody pronounce it. Say that the pronunciation was something different, but I'm not entirely sure. But he's a guy that 1 year of football since he played in like 8th grade or when he was 8 years old, something like that. I can't remember something exactly, but he's a guy that's destined for the practice squad unless he comes in and just like absolutely shocks everybody with how quickly he comes along. Right? It's not entirely unheard of, but it's unlikely. He's the only guy that I'm right now not expecting to make the roster because everybody else, they have a very clearly defined role. And one of the things that we talked about a lot is that they drafted to fill specific roles, and that's what they did. And the 3 to 4 starters, I mean, I guess you can I get where you're coming from because, expectation is the punter, he's going to be a starter, right? Expectation is Jahdae Barron, he's going to be a starter. And then expectation is Harvey's going to be a starter.
Mm-hmm.
And so that I get where you're coming from with that, Jeremy. So I can definitely see see that outcome of 3 to 4 starters. I'm just not sure who that fourth one would be. Pat Bryant, I think he's probably going to be more of wide receiver 3, I guess, but probably see a good amount of snap counts. But yeah, I'm kind of with you there of being optimistic. I see 3 starters and 6 of the 7 making the roster.
Yeah, and I think he's talking down the line as well. So,
yeah,
although he says day 1 starters, so
yeah,
that means immediately out of the gate. So I don't know about day 1, but that would be unbelievable. I just you're not Savon Jones isn't starting, and I don't expect Q Robinson to start unless he's talking to special teams as a starter. That's the punter, of course, that's a starter too. So there you are. Michael Evans, good to see you. Good morning, Michael. Denver Luke, morning Thursday episode. Yeah, absolutely. We're here. Gatorade Gaming's in the house. Morning, Nick and Eric. What's good, Broncos country? We're here hanging out. Good to see you. And Gatorade Gaming says, do you guys know anything about the tight end from the international pool? I do not. That must be news recently. Is there anything you know here, Eric, from this tight end? Well, if you guys have it in the chat, you let us know. But that was, I don't know, the international punter at this point. Background comes in and says 3 starters this year. RJ Harvey, Jahdae Barron, as well as Kurt Shaw, the punter, Crashaw, Jeremy Crashaw from Down Under. So you got to say it with the Australian accent, but from Florida via Australia, of course. So yeah, that was Broncos take the only drafted punter this year, and I do expect him to be a starter. We got Amy Alice saying good morning, everyone. Good to see you. And yeah, Eric, before we get into it, though, we do want to pay the bills and give a shout out to our folks over at DraftKings this week.
Yeah, so the great rewards hunt is on, so join the adventure with DraftKings Casino. For fun seekers, follow the trail to huge jackpots, 3 weekly bonuses, and exclusive games. But the excitement is only getting started because new players sign up with code MileHighPod and wager a minimum of $5 and can receive 500 casino spins on a featured game. Only on the most rewarding place to play, DraftKings Casino. Again, that's code MileHighPod. You're muted. Still muted.
We did it. That's right. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. 21 plus. Physically present in Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, West Virginia only. Void in Connecticut and Ontario. Eligibility restrictions apply. New customers only. Non-withdrawable casino spins valid for future game only and expire in 168 hours. See terms at casino.draftkings.com/promos. Ends 5/4/25 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern time. So clearing my throat, and I hit the mute and I pushed the button, but not hard enough. So hopefully we can push some buttons here. We're doing well. Joseph asks, why are you guys doing the pod today instead of yesterday? Because my wife was in Philly doing an interview and I am home alone with the 15-month-old, and I do not have the ability to do this show with absolutely no support at home. So shout out to my wife who makes everything work. So yeah, the getting him down and everything like that. It's a lot of work being the single dad life. Don't have the ability to escape down here because if he wakes up, I'm gone. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. So, but we're here. You can blame it on her for it being there, but you can also thank her for the fact that this can even happen. Gatorade Gaming said he saw something about an international tight end not counting towards a 53-man roster. The international rules, they had somebody on the roster last year. I don't know if this is the same tight end.
Thomas Yasman, yeah, it's still him.
So, yeah, he doesn't count to the 53. So
or 90.
Yeah, or 90. Yep, or 90. So that's where we're at with him. We'll see. I mean, have there been any international players that have like really become stuff through this international rule just yet? I can't think. Maybe the left tackle from the Eagles, he was drafted. So did he count still in this international pool rule?
Yeah, he still counted.
Okay. Is there anybody else? That's the big one I can think of.
But with it rule is that if they make the 53-man roster, they do count against the 53-man roster. They don't count against the 90-man roster in the offseason or the practice squad if they make the practice squad. So he didn't count during the offseason for them, but once he made the regular roster, he counted for him. He's the only one I can think of off the top of my head. I think there's been another who might have counted that way, but I'm not entirely sure.
Well, you'd think like some of these Australian punters, right? Like, could that be an extra one there? All the same, but yeah, no, we'll see what happens. Good call, Gatorade Game. We got Troy coming in with our first super chat. Thank you so much, Troy. Troy says, the $9.99 super. Some have said that Savon Jones and Quentin Robinson indicate the defense will morph up front from a hybrid 4-3-3-4. Are these tea leaves valid? And if so, what does it really mean for the defense to change like that? Man, I don't know if I see them going more hybrid 4-3-3-4. I mean, you do have Savon who could be more of a early down edge if they want, but I feel like Peyton, George Peyton, that is, the George variety of the Peytons, came out and said that pretty much he's going to play interior, right? It sounded like they were talking about him as a 3-4 defensive end in that day 2 post-draft press conference. But I do think they're going to be more versatile in terms of who they can send pressure-wise. I think you could bring in Talanoa Hufanga. He's somebody who's really good blitz-oriented. They talked about Barron's ability as a blitzer. Q's a little bit more of this amorphous pressure player as well, where I don't know if he's going to be more Drew Sanders off-ball edge hybrid or if he's going to purely move to hybrid. So I think you do get more versatile in who can come and go as far as pressure packages. But as far as becoming more 4-3-3-4, you already see hybrid. My real question more so is how are they going to change coverage wise? Because you had somebody like Jahdae Barron, you become much more multiple in coverage. I see that more of the question than what's going on with the front.
Yeah, I mean, they're already somewhat versatile up front in terms of what the looks that they're giving with their front. And the additions that they made, it just really changed about, again, as you said, who they can send from where. Because you have Q Robinson, who they can kind of take over as that A gap mug blitzer and off the edge as well, that they can get some versatility out of him. Savon Jones, he's mostly going to be a 3-4 end. I still expect that he'd kind of play out of a 2-point stance in certain obvious rundown situations just to get a little bit more size up front. Probably, in some what is it, bear looks, the 5-man front looks that they give in obvious run situations. I would expect kind of a little bit of Savon Jones in that. But yeah, I'm with you. Is I'm more curious to see what they come out and do this year and coverage wise. Because last year they were a little bit more limited, just because you had Patrick Surtain who was able to lock down one guy, and then after that it was just kind of a mixed bag of results, and injuries didn't help things, especially to close out the season. So with Jahdae Barron, they can add a little bit more versatility with the looks and what they're doing in coverage with the secondary.
Yeah, and it's not just Jahdae Barron, but I mean that entire back seven last season has essentially been, outside of Patrick Surtain and Riley Moss, turned over. And Jones, of course, as well. But new state, PJ Locke out, Jaquan McMillan probably out. I'm assuming Riley Moss will win. We'll get into that here in a second. Both linebackers who we had a majority of the season, Cody Barton gone, Justin Strnad back, but hopefully your third or fourth guy that we don't see. Even though we all had collective, tight sphincter syndrome here after the Dre Greenlaw injury news. So that's linebacker health is a big scary one. But thank you so much for the super chat, Troy. My big thing here, just again talking about the front and changing, what I could have seen maybe really changed in the front is if they added a Michael Williams, JT Tuimoloau edge, or an Alfred Collins kind of length guy, where right now Denver's a little bit stubbier, I guess is the word I'll use. A lot more one gapping style players. They didn't add, the length run mass where you can pocket crunch early on compared to the formula they used last year, where I think they were either the most or one of the top two most early down blitz teams in football. I think that's probably still going to be the recipe here. It's just going to change who can come and go. But they didn't add those, length two gapping defensive front players. I think Savon has the body type to do that from edge, not necessarily the leverage all the time, but that's about it.
Yeah, that's one of the things that throughout the draft shows that we had a lot of people complaining about is not adding that nose tackle, that big beefy nose tackle for him, which I get. I think that they were looking at a few guys that just went a lot earlier than they were expecting, and we kind of touched on that a little bit on Monday. But yeah, I mean, they're stubbier. DJ Jones, he's not exactly the lengthiest guy. Malcolm Roach isn't the lengthiest guy, and so it limits what they're able to do. And they don't have that two gapping nose tackle that Sean Payton's really been looking for since he got to Denver. He's been linked to multiple guys over the years, and they've just always not been able. They haven't managed to land who he's wanting. And so it's definitely something they're looking for, and then they're just trying to figure out ways to work around not having that. So you're stuck with a lot of gap and a half and one gapping up front. And so as long as you don't have that piece to sit there and can kind of change that ability up front, you're kind of stuck with what you're able to do.
Yeah, and the nose tackles did come off the board a lot earlier. I think you're ones who have the ability to two gap with a relatively large sphere of influence. I mean, Kenneth Grant going 13, I thought he was more in play for 30. Tyleik Williams going 29, I thought he was more in play for 40. Alfred Collins going, 50? 48 somewhere to the 49ers, their early second round pick. I thought he was more like a 60 pick. So those defensive tackles with a little bit more nose tackles, a little bit more pop, two gapping ability came off the board early and often, which I guess is maybe a reaction to T'Vondre Sweat last season to some extent. He was unbelievable. But at the same time, you have like Jordan Davis from 2 years ago who's not lived up to it. So you never know. Thank you, Troy, so much. Good question. I'm really getting into the weeds here. That's what's fun about this time of year. With First No Fear says, good morning. How many roles are there in the Sean Payton's offense? Joker, big slot, deep threat, power back, explosive back, slasher. Will there be an article about these roles? I think there's not as many roles specific. I don't know. This is a good question. My personal thought is it's not as many specific roles for Sean Payton. It's that he can find guys and fit them into roles, right? So I think that he's been pretty like he has like areas that he wants to attack. Of course, you got the Joker and everything, but you're never going to have a perfect roster. And I think that you bring in talented players who are do what they're asked and have like certain levels of competitiveness, blocking like the must haves. They talked about it with the cornerback and tackling. There's some of that obviously with the offense as well. Then Sean Payton can cobble together whatever it is. I talked about it before. People were, freaking out. Had to take a running back round one. I'm like, Sean Payton is like a plus 10 amplifier across the board for the offense. So I think as far as the rules, Eric, you can add to this. I'm sure you have a little bit more specific stuff. Like he does like to have the 2-back pairing, maybe a third one in there. He likes to have a seam stretcher from the tight end. Of course, he likes to have some level of speed. Somebody can do the slant stuff at wide receiver, but I think he's just, you get him weapons and guys that he likes and he'll figure out the best matching for them over the course of a season.
I agree with you with that about when it comes to wide receiver, tight end to an extent. There's obviously these certain guys that he absolutely loves to have and has to have essentially for his offense to really work. And we kind of saw that last year. He didn't have that mismatched tight end or Joker, whatever way you want to call it. I know a lot of people get upset about Joker when that was the term that he used, and that's why it's caught on. But it's just a mismatch guy. He loves to have that from either tight end or running back. He didn't have that last year. Well, now we expect we do in Evan Ingram. Running back is the one where I would really disagree with you that he has a very clear set of what he likes. He likes that power back and explosive back as that 1A, 1B duo. And then he likes that slasher back who it's a little bit different with Julian McLaughlin, who I expect to fill that role when I went back and watched him, how he was used, especially to the end of last year. That's what role he had. But what's weird with that is that typically Sean Payton has had that guy be 210 to 220 pounds. Typically, it's another bigger back that has surprising quickness that can plant and get upfield quickly and just kind of slash into the defense. So Julian McLaughlin is a much different body type, but ever since that they drafted him, that's kind of been what they've been looking for. They were wanting a little bit more explosiveness out of him his rookie season, didn't really bring it, and then last year that really changed. Hasn't really come along as a pass catcher, limiting his role as well. So running back is the one position grouping that I think that there are very clearly defined roles at. But wide receiver and tight end, it's a little bit more of a mixed bag. What can they bring in outside of having that mismatch guy at tight end?
Yeah, we'll see. We thank you so much with first note for your Ernie Mays is in the house. Great to see you. We stole the draft grade A for awesome. We'll take it. Mark Kennedy, good morning. Good to see you. Gen X says it'd be good to have a graphic with the lingo that we're using. Yeah, sorry, we kind of went into the jargon there as far as some of the football stuff. So, I mean, what were we talking about? 2-gapping. That's is what it sounds like, right? You think about your massive, lengthy, Casey Hampton, nose tackle, Vince Wilforks of the world where they can occupy multiple gaps. Broncos haven't done that as much because they're so blitz oriented. They've used 5 or 6 to generate pressure. So you haven't had as much 2-gapping up front, especially on those run downs early on. And some of that is it's not only, having DJ Jones and Malcolm Roach who are better 1-gap plugs as opposed to taking on double teams and 2-gapping, but also like Nick Bonito having to set the edge versus potentially getting him a one-on-one versus a tight end or as a free rusher. So those are some of the stuff. But yeah, we definitely got into the weeds a little bit there with some of the football jargon. Todd coming in here, good morning. But Jen, you hang around with us. I'm sure you're going to pick up some of it and ask questions because we don't know everything, but we like to talk about football at a somewhat high level. I wouldn't say a higher level, but a somewhat high level, of course. We got Todd. Good to see you, Todd. Hope you're doing well. Marty also, good morning to Marty. Says, out of all the players drafted, who are you most intrigued about? I think I'm most intrigued about Jahdae Barron still, and just what that looks like with so many new pieces in the back seven, what exactly his role is going to be, and if he is going to become a havoc player for the Broncos. Now, last season, the Broncos were really good in pressure up front, but the ball production from the back seven didn't match. Obviously, they got overrun by really great offenses last season. We'll see if that's still the case. But adding somebody like Jahdae Barron, who has just so much ball production on top of Hufanga, who just is a magnet for the ball as well, and Greenlaw, I don't expect them to replicate their pressure rate from last season. It was a historic season for the Broncos that way, just because of statistical output. I don't think they'll be the second best season back to back, or best season again. I do expect a little bit of regression there, but can they maximize a little bit more and take the ball away? I think that's the next step. The most valuable thing you can do as a defense is take the ball away. So that Jahdae Barron is the one I'm most intrigued by.
Yeah, I mean, with what you said, it's hard not to be intrigued by Jahdae Barron the most because, first overall pick. And then the fact, and this is something that, I've talked about a lot, is how important drives are, as the number of drives are getting dropping per game, of getting those turnovers to give your offense those extra drives and steal the drive away from the opposing team. But I'm going to go with Pat Bryant here just because, we don't, there have been guys who have been successful at 4-6, and this is going to be a little bit more on the negative side about Pat Bryant since I've really been praising the pick. But lately in modern history, the last 5-10 years of the NFL, wide receivers who run a 4-6 or slower don't typically pan out in the NFL. On tape, you can see that he's a little bit faster than that. His miles per hour, it translates to about a 4.55 when you do that calculation. But 4.6 is still kind of that deadline for that you want for wide receivers. So I'm really curious about, most intrigued by him, because I can see a great player on tape, or a great talent on tape, and was a little bit of a reach. And so that adds to the intrigue for me. Is Sean Payton going to be the smartest man in the room with this pick, or is this going to be one of his misses? And what adds to the intrigue as well is looking at his history of drafting wide receivers in the top 100. He's drafted 4 wide receivers there, and all of them have been hits to a different degree. Traquan Smith and Robert Meacham are probably the two that you can argue back and forth about how big of a hit they were, but the other two were undoubtedly hits. So that just adds to the intrigue for me, and I think that there's a very clear way for him to be used in the Sean Payton offense. Whether he can actually, step up and do that, I'm really intrigued by him because I like what I saw on tape, but again, he was a little bit of a reach against the consensus board. And so is Sean Payton the smartest man in the room or not? And if he is, and if he hits on this, then I think he's earned our trust in his drafting until he's done in Denver, really.
We'll still critique him. But if he's the smartest man in the room, again, that's the one. Oh, man, I hope this wasn't me. Jahdae. I think the pronunciation is on the last one. I was like, Jahdae Barron. So you want to get that right, of course. It's the semi-cold I have going on this morning, too. It says, really hope this. We got Chase coming in. It says, really hope this year's draft class pans out like last year's did. I mean, last year's did because Bo Nix, but we're still kind of waiting on Jonah Ellis and the other Troy Franklin, right? So I hope it's better hit rate, and we have a little bit more early rookie impact, especially with a running back taken round 2, day 2. You should be getting decent ROI on the running back. But let's get into it here, Eric. Jahdae Barron, expectation year 1. I'm expecting him to be a movable chess piece, Swiss Army knife. You're going to see him on the boundary, somebody who is going to be matched up against running backs and tight ends and slot receivers a lot, mainly living in the slot, but you will get some perimeter, you will get some box. I also expect some edge work in third down, just lining up out there to show pressure and drop or come. I mean, just the simulated pressures and what teams like to do there with those guys. So that's my expectation for him. Questions about him year 1. I think, he's a physical player and he played in the SEC. The tackling is still sometimes a little bit of a problem. He can get through things, but I think the lack of length, the lack of size, the NFL is a different game. So I'm kind of curious about that. Also, just want to see the catch point work from him. Again, coming back to the lack of length, I think that can be somewhat relegated by playing the slot, where you're not getting as much, jump ball, perimeter stuff without leverage or help to the same extent as you do inside. But I expect Jahdae to displace Jaquan McMillan and be a Trent McDuffie style player. And I want, before you hear your thoughts on this, I thought, Trent McDuffie, inside, outside, smart player, lacking length, et cetera, et cetera. But there's been some pushback. People have said, no, he's much more Brian Branch, Jalen Petrie, if you will, than a Trent McDuffie. How do you interpret those two, the different roles there, and what does that exactly mean to you?
I mean, the the comparison that I've always heard with him was Trent McDuffie, across of Trent McDuffie and Brian Branch. It's been just kind of a cross between the two. And when it just kind of speaks to me, it just kind of speaks to his versatility, his ability to do so much for them, that he can kind of play a similar role that Brian Branch plays there in Detroit, but he can also play a similar role that Trent McDuffie plays in Kansas City. And I expect him to kind of take more of that Trent McDuffie type role of being outside, then drops inside in sub packages, which is the majority of the game nowadays. I mean, Jaquan McMillan still had the second most snap counts among the Broncos corners last year. Granted, an injury to Riley Moss, but it was 918 snaps last year. That's a starter amount of snaps for the slot corner. So Jahdae Barron, he's going to see the field a lot, and he's going to be on the field, and they can just use him in a variety of ways. I wouldn't be surprised either if we kind of see Denver use more of a, what's the right word here? Not quite dime, but also not nickel looks with them because of the versatility Jahdae Barron looks. I mean, I guess technically it'd be a nickel package with three corners out there, but just kind of more dime-like looks, and use him in just his versatility to the max, because that's one thing that they've really highlighted was just how versatile he can be for them. I am with you. There are some length issues that I have with him, and that jumping to the NFL is going to be a bit of an issue. I don't see it as much when it comes to, attacking the catch point, but it does pop up when making tackles, and the tackling technique overall does need to be a little bit refined, especially with the lack of length that he has. But he can bring the hits every now and then. He just doesn't do it often. He's definitely a ankle biter, more of a tackler. But yeah, that's kind of the role I expect him in, is outside in base packages for the handful of times they use that in a game, and then sliding inside to nickel with Moss coming onto the field.
Yeah, absolutely. That all sounds good to me. So you do expect that starter year one out of the gate. And Jahdae Barron, I went back and listened to the press conferences from him, and I do think the Broncos had a potential deal in place. That's one reason the Broncos took so long. One thing about the picks being tipped is that you kind of get an idea of who is deliberating and taking their time to the full length of the clock or not. Think of how long the Falcons took in comparison, the Broncos in comparison to like the Colts. So I do think there was a deal in place, but Denver's board, I don't know if there was some shuffling. Like, let's say they thought they were going to take Egbuka and surprisingly hear his name called beforehand. Okay, we're reshuffling now. Is it the trade package that we want, or is it this guy? I think they probably had a line on their board being like, if one of these guys is here and we're not getting exactly what we want in the trade package, we're not moving back. I think that's probably what played out. I'm not as sure about Egbuka or anything on that front, but Denver takes Jahdae Barron, and the question is Jahdae Barron versus the trade package in the end. So they liked him a lot, and I saw some comments on there about, just how it played out. But yeah, they had to have him very high and not expect he'd be there. And the comments, I don't know exactly where it came from, but people in the war room, like almost forgetting Barron was there because he was such a lone player left on their horizontal board so high up. So again, the people really wanted TreVeyon Henderson, and I'm always a proponent of trading back, but I think they think they're getting a first round graded player at 20 on their board, which was not expected for them. So good player, and I'm excited to have him in here. And a premium position, something both Sean and George talked about in the press conference. And there should be an article coming out today about the process and the relationship with George and Sean that I wrote yesterday. And I feel good about the process for Denver overall with their language following the pick.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Klis, he's talked about it. I've talked about it. A lot of other people have talked about it. Jahdae Barron was a top 10 player on their board. With the number of first round grades they had, he was the last one left. And as Mike Klis put it, Jahdae Barron was way up here on their board, and the next guy was way down here. The conversation at 20 was, as you said, it was between Jahdae Barron and a couple of trade packages that were being tossed around. Neither one of them was giving Denver exactly what they wanted. And so they took their highest graded player by far, and they're happy with it. They rolled with it. Nobody was expecting him to be there. That's another thing. They were expecting him gone at 13. I don't think anybody was expecting the Miami Dolphins to take Kenneth Grant. They were all expecting them to go some kind of defensive back, with Jahdae Barron being the most popular, slot there. And I think even George Payton or Sean Payton, one of them, even kind of not out. I don't think they flat out said the Dolphins at 13, but they kind of implied the Dolphins at 13 is where they expected him to go. I'd have to go back and rewatch the pressers to make sure on the wording that they used. And so it's just one of those things of he was there. They didn't expect him to be there. He was so highly graded on their board that they took him. And I don't think there was had he been gone, I think there might have been another player they would have taken at 20. But I think that outside of, of the guys who came close or were there, I only think there was 2 players or trade down and as the options. And I don't think it was, I think Barron was the last of the 2 players.
Yeah, I think if Denver trading down, you're talking Mason Taylor or Travion Henderson, late 1, early 2. But who knows? Didn't come to play in reality. Now, moving on, the guy they did end up taking after 2 trades down, and another thing I love about the process, Sean Payton's first trade down since 2006, and we see 3 trade downs happen with the Broncos. I mean, essentially, that second trade, either the first or second trade was like a pick swap. They did move down, but they moved up. So the goal, they identified, I think the number was 7 players that they liked. They really wanted to walk out with 4 in the first 2 days, and there was like about 7 guys that they really liked in that day 2 range. They ended up walking away with 3 of them. So be awesome to know those other names. See that board, Sean, if you're listening, hit me up. But they moved down twice, and they get their target, who seems to be maybe they're running back 3, 4 on their board, but somebody like, okay, we can't get Genty. Does sound like they tried to maybe move up for Henderson, or Henderson was targeted earlier. Didn't work out. So that's fine, because they still were they liked Harvey and the additional, the ability to walk away with 3 guys day 2 more than they liked Henderson. They didn't think the gap was that much for Harvey and Henderson, would be my interpretation. But Harvey, year 1, he's not going to be a bell cow back. I think that he still would be paired best with somebody who's, 220 and an absolute, between the tackles thumper. Maybe somebody with a little bit more pass protection juice as well, but he's going to be your primary ball carrier still all the same this season. He is rocked up for his size, even though he's a little bit smaller. 208, 205 at 5'8" is a thick, strong player, and you can see that. Liam Cohen was obsessed with it. They had pictures of RJ Harvey without a shirt plastered up round 2, saying, I want to go to battle with that guy. So definitely a rocked up individual. I'll be curious to see how much improvement he can garner this season as far as a pass catcher and a pass protector. I don't think it's all on him. I mean, let's just be frank. His pass protection reps were really bad. And I think that that's something that maybe dropped him 10 to 15 slots for a lot of teams' boards, because it was that bad on tape. But it doesn't mean it can't get better. I think some of it is the UCF offense and Gus Malzahn. But I expect him to be the number 1 running back this season, and fantasy football community is all over him. And I don't think he's limited to being this, outside the tackles runner either. He can run between the tackles. He had a propensity to kick things outside and run past people because he could for Big 12. But I think he does have the between the tackles frame, vision, patience, where he can be an everything runner for this Broncos offense this season.
Yeah, I also think hurting him running between the tackles was how god awful that UCF offensive line was. I talked about this, I think, on Tuesday night with Carl, but going back over that, they had 2 of their guys two of their offensive linemen enter the draft this year. One of them basically walked away from football, not even getting a look at as a minicamp tryout, and one of them signed an undrafted free agent, who was the best one. He was an offensive tackle, Amari Knight. I wouldn't have mind Denver looking his way. He was the best tackle that they had. And the other 3, they're not expected to have much of a shot at the NFL next year as they returned, and unless they, take this big step forward. It was terrible on the inside. Their center and both guards were awful. They were among the worst in college football last year. Mm-hmm. So the fact that he could run around guys and the fact that he didn't have the interior offensive line to be able to hold up in the middle, I think that kind of put him on that I need 2 bounces outside mentality. Denver has a little bit better, or a lot better, infrastructure for the running game. So I think he come in. And then you mentioned the bell cow, and I see a lot of people talk about this. I think bell cow in Denver is unnecessary. Sean Payton doesn't like that bell cow back. He just never really has. It's always been that 1A, 1B, and that number 3 guy, and RJ Harvey's that number 1. And we've kind of criticized a little bit that, RJ Harvey was early. Well, now we know he wasn't, because now we know that he was going to be the pick at number 70 had he been there, because that's where the Jacksonville Jaguars are sitting, and they wanted one of 2 players, RJ Harvey and Ashton Gilletti, who went 66. Neither of them were there, so they took the Detroit Lions trade down. And it got to the point where Liam Cohen was wanting to move up to go get him. He was trying to push to go get him. And so that just kind of speaks to how much NFL teams viewed him. And it goes with kind of what I was saying on the final day of the draft, is that these round 2 and round 3 picks, other teams were eyeballing them. And we now know one of them for sure was the Jaguars. He's explosive. He's got some of the best vision in the class. And a lot of teams were valuing that explosive ability for him. They think that there's a lot more there as a receiver than what he was able to show on tape. Pass protection is iffy because on tape it's really bad, but I have heard a lot of people talk about how there's a strong belief that he has the tools and the traits to really be good there, but I don't see it on tape, so I'll trust their judgment on that when it comes to his blocking. But it's very easy to see why teams liked him as much as they did.
Yeah, so I'm excited to have him. I'm going to try to dab him in all my fantasy football leagues, and we'll see. As much as his role can be this season, it is going to come down to, can he not be a complete sieve in pass protection? Yeah. And I'll be curious to see if Denver makes more moves there, what it means for SMA. We'll go down position by position. It's a long off season. Moving on now to our guy, Pat Bryant. I'll be really curious to see what his role is this season, Eric, because people are talking about him as this little Jordan Humphrey replacement. He's like 30 pounds less than little Jordan Humphrey. Now, that doesn't mean he doesn't have the cojones to be out there, big slot blocking. They'll use some role of him like that. I also think that Devon Vele is not the best blocker from the slot, despite his size, as it would indicate. So I'm sure there'll be a role there. But honestly, I think your little Jordan Humphrey role is going to be split between Evan Ingram and Pat Bryant out there, because Evan Ingram can play that detached F without a doubt. So that's where I'm keeping an eye on. I think there's a chance that Pat Bryant could end up being the Z in this offense this season and be emerging as the second highest targeted wide receiver on the offense, because he does come in with the ball skills in tightly contested areas. He is already a pretty good route runner in those short to intermediate areas, and he doesn't necessarily need to generate space all the time to be somebody who can come down with the football. Now, I am curious about how I don't want to call it extracurriculars, but some of his technique at the catch point, if that's going to be drawing flags at the NFL level. I'm also curious, because he is not from what I saw on tape, Eric, he's not a massive separator, either on the horizontal plane or the vertical plane. And that can be fine as long as your quarterback doesn't have to have somebody like wide open to throw the football. There are some guys who, like, if they're not wide open, we're not going to push the ball there. I think Bo Nix is accurate, and he will test those tight windows. So I'm not as worried about that, but that is something to watch for me. So year one expectation, I mean, this is one where I'm as wide as any spot, because the opportunity is massive, but there are so many guys in competition with him as well in the pecking order. So the wide receiver 2 battle in camp is probably the one I am the most intrigued by this season. And Pat Bryant, he could be inactive game days. It's the type of guy, yeah, 3rd round pick protecting him, but he gets beat up by Vele, Franklin, Mims, and just, not. Also, Pat Bryant didn't do much special teams either, so they're activating Sherfield instead of him. Or he could end up being freaking wide receiver 2 with the ability to play Z slot. I mean, he does well off of press as well, so I think there is some X ability there if you want that. So I'm curious your thoughts too, because this one is as varied as it gets.
Yeah, before I get to that, I wanted to grab a couple comments here. Justin Kate coming in and saying if they wanted Pat, they weren't going to pick Igbuka too. So Loveland is my guess. Jahdae was a steal, though. It's one of those things where I think that they wanted Igbuka, and if they took Igbuka, then we're not talking about Pat Bryant round 3. They would have gone elsewhere, right? I think that's just that trickle-down effect of what they would do. And I'm not entirely sure Loveland is who they were after either. There's been some... Even though there's a lot of smoke there's been some implying that Loveland wasn't a guy, neither was Warren, that tight end early wasn't exactly the way they were looking at. But there's been conflicting reports about that too, because Ian Rappaport said that once Colston Loveland went 10 overall, the Broncos' attempts at trading up, as well as the Houston Texans, I think was the other team he named, stopped. That they stopped calling to try to move up. So there's been conflicting reports about Loveland. But if they landed Igbuka at 20, we're not talking about Pat Bryant here in round 3. And with Pat Bryant I'd be shocked if he ends up inactive for games just because of his value that he brings as a blocker. And I mean, you mentioned it, Devon Vele. was inconsistent at best. Troy Franklin, he's not a blocker. Marvin Mims, he tries, but it's nothing to write home about. It's, at least he tries, I guess would be the best way to put it. So there's a clear role there. And when you talk about replacing Lil Jordan Humphrey, obviously he doesn't have that size. He's 30 pounds smaller, but it's going to help replace what he brought. Those quick slants where they're going to hit him quickly and try to get him to make something happen afterwards. Those quick ends to where it can make something happen afterwards. Because Pat Bryant, when you watch the tape, you can see that he is a little bit better after the catch than you would think. He understands, and one of the ways that he's able to do that is because he has such a smart understanding of angles. And he does have a little bit extra burst, not great speed, but there is a little extra burst to kind of erase angles that defensive backs are taking to just pick up some extra yardage. So that's kind of the role for him there in the slot. And as you said, he can play some Z, he could play some X. So he's just going to be this all-around versatile receiver that they're going to throw out there. I think ultimately, maybe not the second most catches or targets, but I think third. And we could see it bump up to second, obviously, depending on injuries. If Courtland Sutton ends up missing time, then I think Pat Bryant is going to be the guy to step in and replace that, just because he's the closest one who can kind of, even though he is like 20 pounds lighter, 10, 20 pounds lighter than Courtland Sutton, he is the one that has the traits to best do that. Devon Bailey doesn't. So it's just kind of this thing of, it's tough because injuries would be such a factor because all these guys have such clear defined roles to an extent, with Pat Bryant being able to be this first dog guy. Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin, they have very niche roles. I think not expecting much out of Marvin Mims outside of this gadget type, not expecting much out of Troy Franklin outside of, screens and challenging deep, just because that's what they can do best. So Pat Bryant, he's difficult because he's the one who can fill everything, and any injury can really change what we're getting out of him.
Good call. I mean, yeah, I'm really excited and intrigued by the wide receiver group because right now it feels like a potential hodgepodge, not a mismatch, but a hodgepodge of like wide receiver 3 to 5s out there. And with just Courtland Sutton, I'm still nervous about that wide receiver spot, but I feel better about the weapons overall, especially because guys, in-house, entering year 3, entering year 2, a little bit better idea of what they want at tight end, adding Ingram. So you're a little bit more diverse. But the consistency thing here is, the offensive line, of course, and Sean Payton in-house. And that should help even if you don't have, the Bengals pass catchers to help out Bo Nix. So moving on, Savon Jones, probably, he was my guy throughout the last 2 months. Eric, ever since I watched the Senior Bowl, I'm like, oh my God, yes, I need this. This is a bull in a china shop, which sometimes, leads to a little bit of arriving off balance and missing some opportunities, but pressure player, tenacity, and checks every measurable box I want as well. So this is the type of guy you're looking for in this range of the draft. I was happy to see the Broncos move up and secure him. I always felt like 85 was too high, 122 was too low, so I guess they did as well. Year 1, I expect him to displace Jackson, the interior defensive lineman for the Broncos. If he'll make the roster, you're going to see him probably there is a chance that depending on the team you're going against, especially the running backs added to Denver, maybe there is some early down edge work, but where he's going to make his money is pass downs, rotating between Zach Allen and JFM over the B gap. I expect him to be there. He's got some leverage issues against the run that might take some time. He doesn't really have the best hand technique, setting up moves to get off blockers. So I worry about that on early downs. So third down, 4-eye, that's probably the main role. He has a chance to develop into a starter, but I'm of the opinion that, I want 4 or 5 deep on interior defensive line, 4 and 5 deep at edge rusher, that even if he's, ends up being a second wave pass rusher, if he's a good second wave pass rusher, I'm fine with the ROI on this pick as well, because you need 2 deep at defensive line more so than any other spot. So they could bring John Franklin Myers. This pick would still make sense to me because you want to cut down on Zach Allen snaps and have those guys out there. So excited to see what he can be. It does seem like, though, this is the JFM contingency plan overall right now.
Yeah, I think they would like John Franklin Myers back, and that, as you said, Savon Jones is brought in just in case they can't, that he gives them an option to replace him next year. This year, I think he's definitely taking over that third defensive end spot of Jordan Jackson. He's going to help cut down a little bit on the Zach Allen snap count as being able to give them that. At least that's the expectation and the plan and hopefully the outcome. And I'd be questioning going off topic or off to the side a little bit, it's definitely going to create some competition at the middle because they do still like Uwazurike. They still kind of like Henningsen, but he's not as much of a pass rusher. And then they have Jordan Jackson. I think only one of those three makes it with Savon Jones added, because you still have DJ Jones and Malcolm Roach, even though they're not 3-4 ends, they're those nose tackles. They still have to apply to, that lineup math, the snap count math that you have to do up there. But I think there's going to be a very clear role with Savon Jones. I do expect, some early down run defense in certain situations. I'm primarily talking about if they get a big play on first down and it's like 2nd and 2 or 2nd and 1, then maybe we see Savon Jones as that stand-up edge. Third down, primarily pass rusher, 3rd and longs. We're going to see him inside and probably help, change some of the way the math is done there. Maybe we see John Frankenmeyer, Zach Allen, and Savon Jones all out there at the field at the same time. His versatility has been praised by everybody. Sean Payton and them and George Payton absolutely talked about it. So I fully expect him to get used up and down that defensive line, attacking every single gap at some point this season.
Yeah. Moving on, Q Robinson. This is Drew Sanders' heat check for me on this roster, depending on what Q Robinson does. He was kind of utilized like this amphibious, that's the wrong word, was amorphous, kind of movable chess piece as far as a blitzer. You see as much like second level linebacker stuff lining up, dropping down over the A or B gap, as well as pure edge stuff here, trying to maximize him. That's kind of a role that's become pretty popular and utilized in college football that hasn't really worked out in the NFL so far. So we'll see how Jalen Walker works in the league. But it's kind of similar if you watch Jalen Walker highlights or dug into the tape with him. A lot of times a second level player who can be walked down and moved around. But again, the non-defined role, but pass rusher traits and everything, great length, going to have tremendous special teams ability. I think the ideal work for him this season is that he's going to be active because the special teams value is that high. And maybe you have some DPR looks from him from time to time. But this is one where, Drew Sanders better have a healthy offseason and making moves. Because I expect Drew Sanders to be more of the off-ball guy, but there's been some stuff that we've heard, that there's questions about his ability to process the playbook and take what he learns in the film room and to the practice field, and what he learns in the practice field to the NFL field. So linebacker is a shoulders up position, and sometimes it's hard to evaluate that, especially with the role Sanders had in college, just because he wasn't asked to do NFL things, and he might not have that. This is going to be a big year for him. If he can't really work at linebacker, I don't think he's got the twitch, the length, everything you want at edge, where I do think actually Q does have that, the ability there with the measurables. But if not, I could see him taking over Drew Sanders' role, who, despite his, coming back from, was it Achilles last season? I did notice him fairly often on special teams. Like, he did stand out as a, chase and tackle kind of guy on special teams with some blitz package stuff. So that right now might be the role for Q, unless he can develop a little bit better strength, counters, edge setting. There's just too often that he gets crumpled and is on the ground because of his frame and lack of strength and moves right now. So what do you think about Q?
Yeah, Drew Sanders is definitely on cut watch because he was a good special teamer last year. And even as a rookie, when he saw the field on special teams, he actually did pretty well there. And Q Robinson is a guy who can definitely come in and take over that spot, as well as doing and replicating what he kind of has brought to the defense, that ability to get after the quarterback either from the linebacker spot and mug those A gaps. And that's one of Q Robinson's better traits with him, even though he's only played 370 snaps on defense in college. One of the things that really stood out was, when they would line him up off ball and he'd walk down and mug the A gap and then just explode, catching the center and the guard and splitting them and being able to get a quick pressure. I actually like that, his ability there, doing that a little bit more than purely off the edge, but he still can contribute off the edge. I won't be surprised if he's, the top snap getter on special teams, because he has the ability to play all four. And then on defense, if he breaks 100 snaps on defense this year, I'll be a little surprised. I'm not expecting more than 100 snaps on the season, just because it's such a small niche thing that he's bringing with how little experience he has, that certain situations, it's pretty obvious that he can be used in those situations. But outside of that, probably not going to see the field a whole lot.
Yeah, well, 4-star recruit, second highest in Alabama that season. Versatile player. I do think there's a pathway for him as a DPR, wide 9, A
Yeah.
gap stuff. You mentioned 100 snaps. That's fine with me if he's still bringing it as a special teamer and maximizing value. I will be curious to see. I mean, people like last season, we'll call it what it is. Like Jonah Ellis was kind of a DPR a lot of times. Could he maybe offer a little bit more explosiveness from a wider alignment? I don't know. Big year for Jonah Ellis. Big year for Jonah Ellis. So year 2. Moving forward, we got Jeremy Crawshaw from the punter from Florida, starter. I mean, he's going to be a competition, but you draft him. He's handpicked. This is going to be your starting punter. Now, there's a lot of volatility that comes with, a rookie specialist that hasn't been in the league, different football, different rules. But this is handpicked by the Rizzler, Rizzy. This is going to be your starting punter.
Yeah, I mean, at the Florida Pro Day, he spent like an hour and a half, 2 hours just putting him through different punting drills and then had multiple Zoom meetings with him. Rizzy fell in love with the guy, and Rizzy was undoubtedly pounding the table to go get him his punter. Matt Hake, however you say the last name, he's there for competition, probably to help, another guy who was one of Darren Rizzy's dudes to help bring along the rookie and help push him a little bit. And one good thing about Crawshaw is that he's very well rounded, right? When I was going back and watching him and talked about him with a former college special teams coordinator, was that he has the ability to do everything for you. He can boom kicks, he can place kicks, he can hang kicks, he can drive kicks, he can do all of that stuff for you. It's just a lack of consistency with all of it, right? It's sometimes you want him to boom it and it might not hit the foot, come off the foot right, and fall a little shorter than you want. Hang time might not be great. Just the consistency issues, which is something that Rizzy's going to be working with him to cut down on. And so he's your starting punter. And it's just that. He's your starting punter.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I mean, excited to see him. They need that. So we got Crawshaw there, and then finally Lawler, the tight end, Caleb Loner. Caleb Loner. He's alone. He's standing by himself in the end zone, wide open. Loner. Still getting that one. The Baylor basketball player to Utah football player. Shout out to Utah football, identifying him and bringing him in. I'm hoping to see this maybe start a pipeline here, now that NIL is going on and all these college football programs are starting to add these front offices, right? It's not just the coaching staff being able to run everything. They actually have like personnel stuff, and be great for them to start identifying basketball players, especially because how the NBA has gone. Your 6'7", 6'8" power forward types don't really exist as much anymore, especially the paint banger ones. And, it's pretty much all stretch fours these days. So I think there's going to be ample body types that the college football can go after. Maybe it's a little bit, doesn't make sense for NFL teams to purely go after those raw guys. But maybe a couple years in college, get some NIL bucks. We'll be excited to see if that's a potential trend going forward. But Loner, I'm expecting him to compete year 1. This is can you become a good enough player in your niche role and not a complete liability that maybe you can knock off Lucas Kroll? I'm not expecting it year 1 overall, but Kroll is definitely the one who'd be on the outside looking in my opinion. But Denver snagged him. He's going to be signed by other teams as UDFA, but they draft him, and we'll see. It's a fun one. Lottery ticket, but fun.
Yeah, I mean, we got word that the Indianapolis Colts, they had an undrafted free agent deal done with Caleb Loner, and there was a conversation that the Colts were having of drafting him at, I think, 237 overall or something like 232, something like that. But they just happened to have Colton or Hunter Wooler a little bit higher. And so they went with Hunter Wooler and got that deal done with Loner. And there were other teams picking after Denver that were going to draft, that were looking at drafting Caleb Loner. So Denver just took the risk on it and decided that it was worth the 41st pick out of 257 to sit there and just take him without anybody else having to compete with anybody else, because Sean Payton saw him, loved him. 57 snaps, and Sean Payton's like, I want this dude. And I watched all 57 snaps of his the other day. There's more there as a football player than you'd expect for a guy with 57 snaps. Still very obviously raw, but as a receiver and as a blocker, there's he showed more. He showed a lot more than I was expecting for that. And you gave a shout out to Utah and everything. Shout out to the NFL coaches that reached out to Baylor and reached out to Loner through his agent and all that, and telling him, hey, you should look into football. And then Utah came calling, and he transferred to Utah and picked up football there. So shout out to them as well. Shout out to Utah for going in and taking that shot on him. And I'm intrigued. 7th round picks rarely work out. They have a very low hit rate, so it's worth taking that low risk, potentially extremely high reward player there, as the Broncos did here. And I'm just curious to see how it's going to pan out. So it's just a wait and see with him, because it's going to be a year or two before we really get a chance to see a whole lot of him.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun to follow him. I'm really hoping that he doesn't practice squad and get snagged by somebody else. Yeah. But he's just a lot of times the guys that are depth that far down, I'll say it 100 times, it's hard to find a game day active jersey if you're not a special teams player. And I don't think probably right now he will be offering much special teams, but you never know. The basketball to NFL pipeline is not the highest, but I'm curious if it'll start changing now with NIL and just where the NBA is at right now. I mean, maybe he could have a future playing in Europe, but there's a lot of body types that's, those tight end players, maybe some edge rushers as well, but probably mostly tight end wide receiver would be my assumption. So that's it. That's going to wrap it up. We won't get in the DFAs today. It's already 7:36 with our special Thursday episode. So we're going to wrap it up. I see Patrick's in here. Patrick, I'm anxiously awaiting that next shipment of coffee, so we appreciate you. And shout out to Troy for the super chat today. Any final thoughts, Eric, so I can cough here and I can wrap it up after that?
No, I hope you all have a wonderful day. I'll be here tomorrow night with Lance for Dove Valley Deep Divers at 7 p.m. Mountain. Not sure what we're going to be talking about that, but it's going to be a fun show. Maybe then we'll dive into some of the UDFAs, because it's an interesting bunch that Denver's brought in.
Yeah, without a doubt. I typically like to wait until training camp just to kind of there's half of them have no shot anyway. So it's like, oh, you made noise in training camp. Now I'll pay attention. Unless you're a Hawkeye, then I'll pay attention beforehand. No Hawkeyes this year, so they get an F from me. Sorry, Eric. But yeah, thanks everybody. Make sure you're following Eric and I on Twitter. Eric's at Erick Trickel. I'm at Kendell MHH. Also follow us at Mile High Huddle. We're over at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. And as the ticker says there underneath, please subscribe, like, and share. Hope you guys enjoyed the secret bonus episode today. Yeah, thanks for the episode, boys. If you have any questions, like I said, hit us up on Twitter. It's always a long off season, but we're going to be here. We're going to be talking football. Hopefully, maybe we'll get a chance to talk 2026 draft, Eric. That'll probably be June, July when that happens. So we got time. But appreciate everyone. You have a great rest of your day. We'll see you again. I'll see you again Monday morning. Eric will see you tomorrow night. Continue to choose kindness and compassion. Be kind. That's what it says there. Be kind. Have a great weekend. Go Broncos.